right, okay, let's get started. Hey guys, and welcome back. It's our last episode of Offset for this week, which is such a bummer. If you're kind of confused what's going on, my name is Ryan Selvy, and I am a motion designer, live streaming, graphic designer, illustrator here on Behance and Adobe Live, and I have taken over the entire week being able to bring on really cool artists onto Adobe Live to ask them about their process, their work, their inspiration, and any questions and comments that you may have in the chat. This is a live stream, but the replay is available on YouTube and Behance for your convenience. It should have rewatchability, so even if you're not watching it live, I hope to still bring enough content to you that you will still enjoy watching this. Today, we're going to be having on Jack Sorokin, who is a dear friend of mine from college, who is a photographer based in Brooklyn now, which is a newer thing, which I'm very excited about that he moved to Brooklyn. But we'll be talking to him about all of his work and his process and his inspiration. If you guys have any questions and comments in the chat while we're going through stuff, please let me know. Hello to Cody Bear, who is being our wonderful moderator in the chat, both on YouTube and Behance. If you are on YouTube, most of the conversation will be happening on Behance. I'll be keeping an eye on both, but most of the conversation with others is going to be happening on Behance. So if you're feeling a little bit lonely, make sure you hop on over to Behance, you say hi to everybody else, and we'll be sure to get all of your comments and questions up to Jack as we continue it. A big hello to Oliver. Hello to Wade still. And hello to Mike for sticking around from last show into this one. We have a really great show ahead of us with all of our really great segments, and I'm excited to show you guys all of Jack's work. But without further ado, please give Jack a warm welcome because this is his first time on Adobe Live. Hopefully never the last, but it's good to have him. So please welcome him to the show. Hey, Jack, how's it going?
Hey, Ryan. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for being on. It's excited to have you. I'm excited to go through all your stuff and go through photography. For those of us who don't know who you are and don't know what you're about, do you want to just give a quick elevator pitch of kind of yourself as a person and as an artist?
Sure. Yeah. I'm originally from the New York area, New Jersey, New York City. Spent some time in Baltimore with you in college, studying photography at the Maryland Institute College of Art. And then I've been living for most of my 20s in Western North Carolina in like really, really rural part of Southern Appalachia. Kind of living the kind of small farm life, as well as being a freelance photographer and filmmaker at the same time. So that's sort of what I've been up to until this winter. I moved back to Brooklyn and living here with my fiance now.
Yeah, I'm so excited about it. And it's also very present as well in a lot of the work that we're going to be looking at. You have this kind of collide of both this, not Western because you were in, North Carolina or whatever, but this farm life inspiration. And then you also have stuff that's very urban and like people oriented. And it's been really cool to see your work really evolve over time as to your subject matter and kind of the way that you approach colors and composition. But obviously I have a little bit of familiarity over it because I've known you for a few years. But for people who don't know your work, we should hop into our very first segment called Let's Look at Your Work. Let's look at your work. So I'm going ahead. I'm just going to pull up your website here. We have some really great photos right off the top. Do you want to speak to any of your favorites that you recently have up here?
Sure. Yeah. Top left one is an image from just a day of wandering around Manhattan. This is just like an experimentation for me and trying to figure out how emotion can not just be a gimmick, but really be like a connection between content and like what you're making and why you're making it that way. So this guy's a singer, and I just felt like I was like doing all this experimenting with like twisting my camera around and trying to make busy the city lately through motion, and couldn't figure out why I was trying to do that. And this felt like the application that was like really exciting and made sense to me. And
now, just for everyone's reference too, are you shooting predominantly on film or in digital?
Digital. I'm shooting mostly digital. I do shoot still some film. I shoot on a 35, 120, and also some large format, although it rarely gets processed. But
Yeah, obviously
yeah.
film's going to be a lot more expensive, and a bit more of tedious of like having to develop it or whatnot. But do you have a preference between the two?
At these days, honestly, for a long time, I preferred film. At this point, I prefer digital. I feel like I have more of ability to bring my voice through in the precision and the tools that I'm using, and I like that process. I'm actually really excited because today this piece of equipment is arriving that I've been waiting for that adapts a digital back to my Hasselblad film camera that I've been waiting for years. It's like this digital. Anyways, it's arriving, so it's gonna be the mashup of those two worlds for me. So.
No, I hope it gets there safe. And if it arrives while we're here, just let us know. We can hop over to something else so that you can make sure that they don't leave one of those notes that's like, we missed you.
Yeah.
One of the pieces that I know that we can directly jump into is this idea that I was talking about with this like farm life that you have here.
Mm-hmm.
And you have this series that I've seen a lot of them for. What is this about?
Yeah, this is from Rodeo Boys. So if you go over to Works on the left hand side and then click on the first one right there, this is a project I worked on for about 5 years while living in Marshall, North Carolina. That was the town I lived in, and I'll talk through this. You can skip through the writing, but yeah, this work is about masculinity. It's about growing up. It's about community and vulnerability. This is probably the longest project I've ever worked on, and I would go to this little rodeo in my town, 5 minutes away from me, on the top of a mountain. Happened like every other Saturday on the warm season, and I would go as much as possible. And I became, like well acquainted with all the people there, and they knew me over the 5 years by name. They would they're people in the community, so I got to see them in my front yard, like cutting the trees and doing stuff like that. See them at the grocery store. Can't miss these people at that point in a small town. And that was just like a huge evolution in my artistry and the practice of building community through making art. But also now I'm really looking at this work living in New York City and with a little more distance from it, trying to see why I made it for myself, and also what to do with it, right? Like as an artist, like how do I take all this stuff I made and bring it maybe not just on a website, but into the real world, onto a wall, or into a space where maybe these people can see it. So that's something I've been thinking about with this, but that's what this work is.
Oh, well said. Peter Favinger has entered the chat. This is Two Incredible Gents. So hi, Pete. Thanks for tuning in. Also, Mike saying this first rodeo. Cody really likes the whole process you have going on. How did it feel kind of as an outsider to this idea? Because obviously you've never like ridden a bull before, right?
Yeah, and I still haven't. I
You
didn't get
still
on.
haven't.
They asked me many times, but I have to say I saw people get just like way too injured to make that. I was just like, I'm not doing that.
And having to document and kind of like, I really liked this moment of, it looks like they're praying, I guess, probably before a ride or something. How did it feel when you were approaching these scenarios where you weren't necessarily a participant, but you were kind of the watchful eye with the camera?
Yeah, I think that took some time. It took paying attention to when and how to do that in a respectful way. It also took like building enough of those relationships so that there's just trust there, right? Like they know where I'm coming from. They know the values I'm bringing to the images I'm making, and that I'm also giving these images back to the community. It's a really big part of it, right? Having like fidelity with your subjects is really important. Um, and that just gives you access in a way that is just really generative for them and also for you, right? So I had people like over the course of the years, like people who passed away, whose grandfathers or grandmothers I took pictures of, and then would come and ask for the photographs of them that I had made, right? Or these are some of the first time people are being seen in this way, and that is really powerful both for them and also like an honor for me to have that access. So I think that comes in like spending time, right? Just that's what it is, spending time.
And the lighting's really beautiful on all of them. I mean, you've captured all different types of day, and all different types of shadows and highlights in it. Obviously, these are really intense scenarios of like, obviously, there's a lot of movement. There's a lot of really like farming industrial like things moving around, swinging doors. Do you show up to a shoot like this with a bunch of lenses and a camera bag, or are you more so like I have my one camera, my one lens, I'm gonna make this work?
Yeah, probably the latter, but I'm the kind of weirdo that like brings the whole entire case with all the lenses. It's in my car, and then I never change it. I just like put on one lens and I use it the whole time.
What's your favorite lens that you tend to kind of use as your old reliable?
Yeah, I use a 35mm lens on a full frame camera, and then that for me that lens gives me the opportunity to have some amount of like natural width to that reflects some of my like normal eyesight. And also I feel like it encourages me to get closer to my subject a little bit, which I really like. That requires that I already talk to them. It requires that relationship that I think is going to breed a richer picture in the first place. And then I would say the other lens that I use pretty often is a 50mm lens, and that is a much more I would say I use that when I think I'm not going to be photographing people, when I'm going to be photographing the texture or the I don't know. There's some images in here we might get to that like look like they're close crops of like a muddy back or boots on the ground or things of that nature. I think I like the tightness of the frame. It's a little more. I don't know. I'm a composition fanatic. Like I don't know if you can tell in these images. Like I love really strong composition, and I just feel like with those two lenses, I can have two kinds of that happen very easily.
And you can have that depth as well. With a shot like this, obviously, I guess you're on what? Are you inside the?
Oh yeah, this is wild.
The radio? So, you like? Did you hop in? And you like lean over and shoot up?
This is a dangerous thing to do. I am sticking my body through a fence. That door is about to like swing open to where I am, and I am probably getting yelled at to not do that. But it took a bunch of years to be able to so there's, I don't know if anyone's been to a rodeo, but there's an area, it's like the dugout, right? It's in a baseball game, like where all the riders hang out, and you're not really supposed to be back there. It's not where like the kid from New Jersey, you know, that doesn't look like he belongs is supposed to be with his camera. But over the course of a bunch of years, I got comfortable with just entering, and people started just feel comfortable and wanting me to enter that space and bring me in there until it was just sort of an automatic permission. And that's what let me be right there in the shoots for this sort of an image, or many of these images are made only because I was allowed into that area. And that wasn't because I was on a job. That wasn't because I paid money for it or even asked any particular person with authority. I think it's because I made enough friends, you know, over a period of time and gained their trust. And it just happened very naturally.
Peter's in the chat saying that it's the recklessness though, which I think is funny because you're like, oh, it's a very delicate collection of like talking to people and being and making relationships, but in reality, you're also like leaning through a fence where you might get clobbered by a bull.
Yeah, and that's it. I mean, I think there's the also irony, right? Is that like I'm often not photographing in the action of the rodeo. My interest is in the people, and leaning through the fence, there's actually might be the rodeo like the event might be happening, and I'm looking at the guy who's getting ready, right? And I am distracted and not thinking about getting crushed by the bull, and like really interested in that guy and his face and what's going on there.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like the one that we already looked at with this one is pretty much maybe like one of the only ones where we even kind of see many of the animals in an environment that would remind you of a rodeo. Obviously, we have like the fences around that you can kind of relate. People are in cowboy hats, so you're like you have the idea to fill in the blanks. But to your point, there's really no like bucking bulls anywhere. Even in this one, it's after the math of someone has like fallen off the horse.
And
this for me.
This for me is like actually really emblematic of my kind of some of the ethos around this work, which is only coming to light now, right? As you make as I make work, I like especially long-term work. It's only like many years later that I'm sort of in reflection able to see what I was making a little more clearly, and I'm really attracted to this picture because it's a mixture of like failure in some way, of losing. Most of the time, you don't make your 8 seconds, which you need to make to be able to like earn any points in the rodeo. You have to stay on for 8 seconds or more.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, that's sort of how it works.
Now you're like an expert in rodeos.
Exactly. Dude, I haven't even done it, but I'm an expert in rodeo. Yeah, you have to stay on for 8 seconds or more, and if you don't, you just don't earn any points. And like most of the time, these guys are not even getting 8 seconds. And I think what I was sort of attracted to is this like failing together, right? It's like being on a sports team and losing, but you all lost together, and then you like come back to the next game like as a group, right? And like energized by that. And I think that there's like this is an individual sport, but it's also a community building experience. And there's something about the constant experience of losing with each other that I think is part of the sort of like catalyst for bonding and community that I'm thinking about.
Now, I know that you said a lot of this is also with like masculinity and the idea of like bonding over these experiences. Were there ever any women that were wanting to like contribute and be part of the rodeo as well?
Yeah. Why don't we actually, I'm going to have you click over on commissions for me.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. And go down to Arena of Dreams for Stern. So I met a girl named Gabby, and this was her first day ever going to the rodeo to ride a bull. And I met her the first day of the season in 2022. And then I worked with a writer from Stern Magazine, it's a German publication, and I followed her over the year, and I followed her until the end, and we sort of saw her progression. And yeah, I sort of saw that as an opportunity to see what it was like to be really the only girl amongst a lot of guys in this sort of environment. And the truth is they're super supportive. And she barely ever made 3 or 4 seconds, to be really frank. But it's a rite of passage to get on, right? And it's a rite of passage to like get back up and do it again. And I think that's sort of the ritual that she was taking part in. It's not about winning. And they were very willing to let her take part in that and be a part. And yet, like, there was clearly an element of gender that was happening as well. So
yeah. And it's cool to kind of see, like, even in these shots, she's kind of surrounded in this all male force of idea. And kind of to your point, she feels very isolated, but it also feels very empowering to see all of these shots. Whereas she's like looking at the camera, everyone else is kind of looking away. You have a bunch of different like nighttime shots during like golden hour shots and daytime shots. When you were specifically shooting for rodeos, did you have a preference of a time? Like, was it nice to shoot underneath the giant like floodlights they have? Or did you more like appreciate the shots that you had during the day?
Yeah, the floodlights are terrible, man.
Yeah.
There's like 5 minutes that the sky is still kind of this image, honestly, where the sky has this like little bit of light left to it, where the floodlights balance really well, and you get this beautiful dark hue in the sky. Other than that, the floodlights would like flicker between this like weird green and pink and this magenta, which made it so that like editing my images or trying to build consistency has been a nightmare.
Yeah.
And then just to be frank, also like it's on top of a mountain, right? And it's like a clear cut top of mountain that's been turned into it's like the county fairs there, things like that, right? Also the rodeo during that season. So it's got this beautiful access to light at the end of the day. And what I found was there's a peak time to go to this rodeo, and it's 4th of July weekend, because they do 2 back-to-back rodeos on July 3rd and July 4th. And the sun stays up the longest. So you get like the most amount of your like midsummer, like sunset, golden hour, and everybody is dressed head to toe in American stuff. Like,
Right.
So it's just like, it's just like amped up and then it just like, and the place is packed and everyone's really excited and there's fireworks at the end of the night. And I don't know, I feel like that for me has, I didn't even realize it, but over the course of the 5 years I was going, I made a commitment to like 4th of July weekend. Gotta go.
Yeah. Very Americana of you. For all of those, actually, we're speaking to this point. Color is obviously something that you probably deal with when you're working in person, but also in the editing process. Is there any kind of approach you take to color when you're shooting? Do you avoid certain colors when you're shooting, or is it mostly like if something's going to be problematic, you're just going to deal with it kind of in the post of the edit?
I deal with as much as I can in camera. So even with composition as well, both color and composition and light. I would say I definitely have to work in post to get the color to be how I want it to be. There's a lot of balancing in the shadows, midtones, and highlights using sort of the color wheels, those tools. I make those global adjustments. That gives me some more like richness and color contrast, as you would call it, in the grade. But and that also, to be honest, like it has a lot to do with like toning it to look more like film,
Right.
or to have those sort of qualities. Um,
Are you bringing a
yeah.
light meter on site, or is that all just stuff that you use with it built into the camera at this point?
Built into the camera. I shoot with a Nikon digital camera. I tend to underexpose because I'm really thinking about photographing people more often. I like the skin tone matters most to me when photographing people. And yeah, and I just like lean towards darker images. I really like my images to be rich, but on the darker end of the spectrum. And in that case as well, like fairly clean to some extent. So when you're talking about like trying to keep color out, like I will very often position my body or move the subject or my relationship to them so that like they're overlapping some distracting feature in the background, whether that be something that's very bright or that's something that's very colorful. But I'm very aware of that. And then I think something I do in post that still happens is extremely aware of like where the edges of the frame and removing distracting like items, and that could be color or shiny bits.
Yeah, just having that the shiny bits.
The shiny bits,
Just
yeah,
having that intent.
Yeah.
In contrast to kind of some of these rodeo shots, you also have this commission for Senator Richard Briggs for ProPublica, which
Yeah.
I think is really interesting to kind of show both your range of skill and also your range of being able to approach portraits in a different way. When you were approaching this project, how did you approach it in a different way from the rodeo, and how did you approach it in similar ways to the rodeo?
Yeah, I so different because it's got the studio look for sure. At least this image does, and that's because I showed up at his house with a backdrop and put it up on his porch. So similar in the sense that like when I showed up, I don't think I took pictures for the first 30 minutes. Actually, if you could go back one to him sitting with that, yeah, this is the first picture we took. So this is. I showed up and he was in this, which is like not the kind of outfit that his publicist or the story probably wanted to run. But he was like, it's game day, so I got to support the team. And I kind of chatted with him for a while. So that's similar to the rodeo, right? It's like about building that fidelity and trust with the subject in the beginning. But different because this is really manipulated. I was like thinking about trying to use a manipulation in light and also trying to approach it stylistically through the background. So if you go to any of those other images early on or even later on, actually, you can keep going. There's some images where there's like glaring light on him. You can keep going. Yeah, like on his eyes. I'm using a mirror in this. So I'm walking around with like a big piece of flexible acrylic mirror in my hand and catching sunlight and tossing it right at him. This story was about a very political hot topic at the moment that was just like he was sort of between things. And I was trying to be a little more conceptual, I would say. And then I think the background, and so like looking in reflection, using the mirror, that sort of stuff. And then approaching it through the background and with this black and white look with the vignetting, that white vignette on the outside, sinking the darkness in the center. I think part of that was bringing some sort of austerity to him as a subject. He's like this like very wealthy politician, or almost like he very much wants to be a statesman. Like has that vibe.
Yeah, this one's definitely my favorite. It gives a vibe of like politicalness to it, and I don't know why. I don't know what it is with like maybe just the angle of it, but
it's also maybe showing some of the theater, right? It's like you can see the stand, you can see the background, you can see him in the suit, and it's behind the veil in some way,
right? But it tells its own story, and it's also such a cool choice to have it in black and white. Did you shoot this in black and white, or was this something that you later created in black and white after the fact?
I later created in black and white after the fact. I felt like there was an energetic, like there was a different energy to making him in black and white in these images that I wanted him to have. Yeah.
Do you ever shoot in black and white exclusively?
I do, yeah. Especially the on film, I love shooting in black and white, and when I do, I think very differently about what I'm photographing. I think when I'm shooting film, I'm thinking about color or I'm thinking about black and white very intently, depending on what the stock is in my camera. And yeah, and I that also applies to like when you're shooting black and white, you're really thinking about contrast a lot more.
Right.
And that could be true in color contrast and light contrast, but in black and white, things can be far more graphic and far more pleasing that way. So
absolutely. And then let's just touch on one more. Is there a specific product you would like to touch on before we kind of hop into other segments?
If you can pull up my website again, show me what's on there. I forget.
I really enjoy the Craftsman one too. I know that's also commission, and we kind of like cycled through a lot of your commission work. But
sure, that's fun. This is strobe work. Actually, let's talk about this. Yeah, I'm using artificial light here.
Oh, really?
So this is all artificial light. Yeah. I also shoot with
the
strobes.
lighting dynamic of it is so strong and dramatic.
Yeah, my fiance will be like, Abby, she was assisting me for this picture. She's outside on a cell phone trying to like take my command about what angle to put the little light on a stand.
No way.
To get the sand to just pop up in the right way, you know. That little dust.
Oh, what, right down here?
Yeah, exactly. That was the meat of that was what I was trying to get at. So this is a commission for this really high-end furniture company. They're actually opening up their first store in the spring here in the Meatpacking District. But they're and might be doing some video work for them and things like that in the future. But I've done a lot of stills down in North Carolina where they sent me to photograph all their craftsmen that like do the high-end, you know, woodworking and sewing and fabric work that goes into their products. So yeah, if you want to flip through them, you're welcome to. I think the thing I would really like to talk about is just that, you know, I'm always trying, when I'm using strobes, I'm trying to mimic natural light. I'm trying to, this one's actually natural light. I'm trying to at least make it feel like it has purpose or intention. And this one's fun. It was like a little more graphic. Again, like
now from a business perspective, when you're approaching these different shoots, especially when they're from clients, because I know that we're like right now we're specifically looking at your commissions situation. What are the ways that you approach it when you're planning out the shots? Do you bring a mood board to them? Do you create like a shot list of like, these are the things we have to hit? Are these the things that we have to kind of achieve? Or is it more like you do the shoot and then you kind of break down from the selects that you found?
Yeah, I think for a commercial shoot, like most commercial shoots, the client is handing me a shot list and they're having like this are the musts. We must get this round peg getting sanded because we got this item that has this round peg and we want people to know that it's sanded.
Right.
You know, that's a must. There's also by the way, there might be cool things with the leather stuff that we do, you know, see if you can get stuff like that. And then that's just up to me. Right. So that's often there's like a must list and then there's like a wanna haves. If it's cool, you can get it. But that's like this kind of shoot, or even the whiskey stuff where I got sent to photograph a book about, you know, whiskey. I went to distilleries and things like that. You know, you're put onto location and then you're in the middle of a factory and you can't, well, not you can't, but in this setting, like there's not 1,000 art directors and producers around me that are controlling everything and shutting down the factory.
Right.
That's a different kind of commercial shoot. These are more like semi-reportage, editorializing the real work in some way. Yeah. So sometimes they're just like, see what you can get. You know, that's like the Maiden Home did that a lot. They're like, yeah, I mean, like the people there know the products that they're making for us. They make for different companies and they make certain products for Maiden Home. And they're like, these craftsmen know what fabric we use. So ask them to show them that fabric. Like, you know, this is them like rifling through the fabric.
Right. I mean, I like the texture that came with this, but both in the skin with the skin texture and also kind of like that's right next to this really tactile fabric that we have. You know, you can really see each of the seams to it, which is really cool. And then you obviously have these gigantic, very like heavy looking scissors that kind of break it all up as it kind of breaks through the entire composition. So it's very cool to see.
Yeah, thank you. I feel like, so even when I'm talking to them about doing video work in the future, one of the things we're talking about is elevating that exactly what's going on there. That sort of like, I don't know, people shoot. My client was sort of talking about like ASMR, right? Experience. Yeah. So through video and the introduction of sound, you can like start to get even closer to that tactile experience of what's going on in their products.
So, do you mind if I pull up your cinematography reel?
Sure. Yeah, it's
cool.
a year dated, but yes, sure.
Yeah, it's still great. So, I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna go share my screen, and we're gonna you have audio to it, right? Right.
Yes, there's a fun song that's attached to it.
So I will go ahead and make sure that I have
Hey, kitty cat.
my audio shared as well, and then we'll check that out, and then we will talk about it right after we're done with it. So
All right.
let's check it on out.
Everybody, please give a warm welcome to this current mood. Here I am, easy please. Here I am, okay with it. Here I am, being Mother Nature's bitch. Here I am, the whole world is my daddy. Here I am, wabi sabi puppy. Here I am, desperate for attention. Here I am, being Mother Nature's bitch.
That was great. It was really cool to also see parts of the rodeo. Sorry for the cat. It was also cool to see parts of the rodeo also in live. It was cool to also see how you kind of really sat on some of the shots as well, especially since like that kind of does allude towards photography a little bit more in the idea that we're sitting with a moment for a period of time. But that was great. I loved seeing the lights also with the dancing, with the purples and the darks. Obviously, you were originally drawn to photography as an artist, but I feel like cinematography kind of has come along with this as well. What got you into cinematography? Do you feel like it's pulling you stronger than photography now? Do you feel like the two are married more?
Yeah.
I guess it's a lot
I
of
feel like they
questions to
don't.
answer.
That's a lot of questions, yeah. But thank you. Yeah, I don't think they're not married for me at the moment. I think in a lot of ways they feel like different languages, and I'm trying to really embrace like what photography does really well, and what cinematography or filmmaking and in its entirety with sound included can bring. I'm being drawn to cinematography more just in my career. I feel like as a photographer, especially out where I was living in a rural place, a lot of my work was fairly solo or maybe with one assistant. Working in filmmaking, it's just more of a group effort. I love working with people. I love socializing. It's just like a career choice in that way that I think just including more of it is something I'm interested in. And then yeah, I don't know. I guess like as far as like my artistry, I'm interested in both for, like I said, for different reasons. Yeah, they're different doors to walk down, and I'm doing them both at the same time. So we'll see where they go.
Absolutely. In the chat, by the way, Nadia saying pretty with a thumbs up. Clever saying dancers are unusual pests in the garden, which is kind of funny because they're, I guess, trampling on all the different livelihood or not the lively pieces. And then Kara's also saying beautiful reel. Because it's great to see. But yeah. Specifically, I think my favorite were these dancers in the dark, which turned out really cool with your continued of exploration of light and
that
the lantern that's there.
That was really fun. So that's my work with Kate Weir. She's a brilliant choreographer that built her career up here in New York, moved down to North Carolina a bunch of years ago, similar to me, and is still down there. And we've worked together for the last 3 years now, making quite a few films. And this is called Moth. There's 2 films in here you'll notice of dancing, both with her. First was Landfall, which is the sort of the two women that are in nature. And then that went through the festivals, and that was really successful, really exciting, our first sort of foray into it. And Moth is now doing the same thing, and it's being really well received. But it was just a really cool experience for me, beyond working with dancers, which is just exciting. These are like incredibly talented people that can do things with their body that I like the possibilities. It's just like mind blowing.
Yeah, but you shot in the woods for that one, right? So like,
yeah,
how did that
those
affect
were,
your process? Was that
well,
more
that was,
difficult, or did you feel like you could rely on the nature to like prop yourself up against?
yeah, I mean, the for Landfall, we actually shot that in like peak COVID. So we stayed like on a farm in different houses, and we did a kind of a residency over 9 days,
Oh, wow.
shooting all over different landscapes in the area that Kate and I would scout that day, and then bring the dancers out to. And it was highly like intuitive process. So we would sort of just think about how to incorporate them into the landscape, either individually or together. It was really interesting, and I think for the dancers, a huge experiment for them, because it wasn't so dancerly, as opposed to Moth, which is like super dancerly. It was like a choreography that we performed. We did it in a black box theater, and for me, that was the first time I got to like get a lighting director to like, you know, rig up lighting in a black box theater and like make it exactly how I wanted it, and trying to give it to this moonlight feeling, the blue that would contrast the orange of this lantern. That was kind of a conceptual idea to the film.
And so do you think that that's something you prefer, or after doing it, were you more like, I kind of like just having my own scrappiness of lighting on site?
I like my own scrappiness. It's just more, honestly, there's nothing like natural light, and I don't use a ton of artificial lighting in my cinematography. Even when I have, I feel like, I feel like theater lighting is a lot of fun and cool, and it's big, but it's really different. It's not the same as lighting that's been rigged for that particular shot in that particular way. You can't bring it really close, which is one of the things, you know, if you're shooting
It's kind
like
of
a really
almost
close up with
sterile
somebody,
in a way.
it's a little more sterile, yeah. And it made it, I think for this project, it was really appropriate, because this project was a like strict choreography that we were trying to adapt for the camera. Very different than a lot of the other work that, you know, we're making. So
yeah. Well, thank you for walking us through all that. It's really cool to go through all your work. One of the things that we are constantly kind of exploring on Offset is the ability to juggle this creativity and also being human. And one thing we like to really talk about is burnout. Burnout and artist block, it's something that we all have to deal with quite frequently. What do you do when you kind of are getting in a rut, or if you feel like maybe things are getting a little too repetitive?
Yeah, two things. So one, I've just learned that there are cycles to my creativity, and it has to do with my relationship to how much work I have going on at the moment, like, you know, commitments to a job and making money. So when there's not enough space and time to focus, it's just like I have a lack of room to make things. And that can sometimes, I don't realize that that's actually what's happening. And I'm like blaming myself for not making stuff, but it's just, I'm committing my energy somewhere else that time of the year. My career often in the winter is a lull. And so I've just learned over the last couple of years to embrace that winter time as a time to reflect on my work I want to make for myself, and sort of dive into what that could be. The other thing I've been doing is just like conceptually, I've been using ChatGPT a lot to bounce my ideas off, because I'm a highly vocal person. Like I need to like talk out loud to somebody, and then I just suddenly I get my epiphanies out loud. And my fiance doesn't want to talk to me all the time about everything that's on my mind at any moment. It does. It really does. And so I've been doing a lot of like walking my dog, and then using it with dictation and debating my ideas and working through things with it, trying to sort of sculpt what I'm thinking about and hear it out loud.
Now, have you played at all with Hugging Face yet? It's like a new ChatGPT.
No.
No, I'll send that to
I
you
mean, I've
after
been
the
on.
stream. You have to try it out.
Yeah,
It's
please do.
of the same ChatGPT is the same kind of approach to it. But I think this is a
Okay.
really great segment because I know as a friend, we've talked a lot about ChatGPT. We've talked about AI. We've talked about image generators. We're talking about Firefly. And one thing that you've been doing recently is this this collected series about corn and using artificial intelligence to create these images. You want to talk a little bit about this?
Yeah, this is like totally new and really fun for me. So I've been making, yeah, a bunch of different series of images that I'm still using the language of photography. I'm even using the language of the cameras that I use and how I might want to make images. But I'm trying to create images of an imagined illustrated world where corn and our relationship to it is a little more on the surface. I read this book, The Omnivore's Dilemma. Other people may have heard of it. In the first chapter is this whole big.
Oh, looks like we lost him for a second, but that's okay. I'm sure he'll come back. One thing that we can speak to though is this this corn series that oh, he's back. Okay, cool. What was the book that you named? What was the book?
Omnivore's Dilemma.
Omnivore's Dilemma. Okay, cool. I'll be sure to
It's
put that
by
in the chat for
Michael
everybody.
Pollan. Yeah, by Michael
Okay.
Pollan. It's all about how we make decisions, what we eat. And the first chapter is all about how corn is in everything, our food, our clothing, like the plastic products that we think are made of plastic, but they're actually made of corn, all sorts of stuff. And so I'm just like, I'm interested in how AI and this technology can give me an access to making images that I wouldn't otherwise be able to in the real world. And also to sculpt sort of more conceptual ideas, but still using the language that I have for a visual world, which is about people and about symbols in a documentary sort of way. These are not documents of the real world, but they're like using the symbols of white collar men in bureaucratic spaces, conference tables and ties and suits. They're using that sort of iconography to talk about power and capitalism and America and corn. So
now, when you're
that's
going
it.
and you're creating these, obviously putting them in image generators and they're giving you a response, are you bringing them into Photoshop or anything to then do edits to them? Or are you mostly kind of just working off of text to image based solutions?
Yeah, for these, I'm working off of just text-based solutions. So I'm not doing any additional work. I have done a little bit of, I wouldn't really call it storyboarding, but it's something like that for pitches, for projects, commercial projects where I am using these generations. And then I'm going back in and trying to refine those images to be a little more specific to the way that I need them to be. Or I'm grading them. All of these are going to look like they're part of one commercial, right?
Right.
Or I am using a variety of tools to try and extend the image to make them a wider frame. A lot of these are generated in a square format. Firefly, which I was playing around with this morning, like has a couple different formats now. So you can get 16 by 9 if you wanted to, make something that looks like it belongs in a film.
Right.
But
it's interesting because this reminds me, this one in particular is like the only one that actually feels authentic because it feels like not authentic in the sense of like it could be a real photo.
Yeah.
Is because it reminds me of when Battery Park was covered
in wheat.
in wheat.
Yeah.
And this kind of is reminiscent of that.
Yeah. So yeah, actually, I think these images, I'm not trying to fool anyone.
Right.
Yeah, they're not meant to be. There's a surrealism to it. There's a dreamlike nature that is allowed, I think, or I'm trying to allow it. Because it's like X-ray vision is what I'm trying to imagine, right? It's like how, like, if corn isn't everything, so like what if you put on glasses that could let you see it, right? And that's a silly idea, but it's also like when you actually get into it, it's kind of freaky, kind of scary and disturbing and surreal. So
Kara says that they are very wild and it feels so imaginative, which I absolutely agree with. I love how many places you've taken it. I like the complement of bureaucratic settings too, with the idea of white collared men and this idea of like the literal surrounding of corn. Cody is saying the food industry absolutely revolves around corn. and it's really cool to see that like physically represented.
Yeah.
When you're creating something like this with this cow, though, how did you kind of make it to meld around? Did you say just give me a cow with corn kernels spread around like spots? Like, I don't even know how I would prompt this one.
Yeah, I said, give me a cow made of corn. And then I did it so many times that I had to curate out the one image that finally felt like it was close enough to what I was looking for.
Yeah.
And I added things like corn texture and everything is corn and things like that, just to like encourage a little bit more corn.
Right.
Because sometimes it would be like the cow and then it would be like a pile of corn, or it would be just like the cow in a field of corn or whatever, right? Or the cow was like a corn cob, and I was like, that's not quite what I'm looking for. So it takes an enormous amount of trial and error with the process of like once you have how you want to assemble it and you've sort of gotten something close enough with your text prompt, I find that like then I have to re-roll it over and over and over and over again, and it's that process of like being like, aha, that's the picture, right? That is meeting my idea, and knowing when you get there and being willing to keep with it until you get there or change the way you're going about it. You know?
Now, I know that in this example, it is an example of AI art as a final form of a piece of content. But I know that privately, you and I have spoken about the idea of AI in the process and the idea of bringing it into making your life as a photographer easier. I think
I have work we can look at that.
Oh, do you really?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, if you go to my Instagram, I think one that would be appropriate is if you want to go to the wrestling pictures. I've now if you can go down a little bit, it'll be like three guys. Yep, on the left.
Oh, did you say up?
Yep, right in the middle. Three guys in red jackets on the left.
Three guys in red jackets. Oh, these guys?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so these are also AI generated images of wrestlers. I went to a high school. I was a high school wrestler that was black and white and red. That was our colors. And I made these as I'm like trying to think through the images that I want to make, or I'm thinking about scenarios. I'm thinking about the use of lighting and contrast and gesture and community and what that could mean. And once I see these images, certain combinations, I'm like, oh, those are images I do want to make. I want real people and real documents. And I want to use these as inspiration because now I know I haven't gone through, like, yes, I did all the mental work to know that I wanted to photograph wrestlers. And for example, I'm going back to my high school most likely to photograph the wrestling team and going to photograph adult wrestlers in Hoboken in a couple of weeks and things like that. And my interest in that has always been there, but the sort of, it's saving me a little bit of time, but also in securing my interest in it, right? I feel like I'm like, okay, yeah, these are valuable, and I really want to pay attention to them when they're with their, their partners, or when they're touching each other, or when they're looking off together, but they're like on the bench, right? Like,
right.
I'm working through the moments without having to like work through all of it in real life, which it's not like taking away the process. It's just like confirming my interest in the subject.
But I know you also spoke about too the idea of maybe storyboarding or prepping for a shoot, and I guess this kind of also speaks to that because you're seeing shots that you would maybe explore. Do you feel like that's going to be a part of your prep work now, moving forward with most of your shoots?
Absolutely. I think the one, it's interesting. Yeah, the one holdback for me is that like I can't really tell a client that this is an exact storyboard because the controls around composition is so crude at the moment. Where the angle of the camera is and why to anything. You can say wide shot, and you sometimes barely even get wide shot. And what that even means. So yes, it's going to definitely continue to be a tool that I use more and more and more in that way. And it's just about it, sort of the process of being able to use it and refining. One of the things about Firefly that I found interesting was that is built into it right now. At the moment, they have like a portion of it that actually you can have like a drop-down menu and pick a kind of composition or a kind of lighting, which right now in some of the other text generators, you need to like already have that information in mind. Like, I need to know what golden hour is, or I need to know what a Hasselblad camera is, or what f2.0 is, right?
Yeah.
I'm just interested in the fact that Adobe, and I imagine other companies are probably also thinking about sort of not requiring everybody to have all that language and sort of being able to pick them much the way that we pick filters and other things in the past.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that will, when that technology evolves a little bit more and I can like have some more control over the composition, this will be, I mean, might be making commercials with text to video, who knows?
Right. I mean, it's a wild future ahead of us.
Yeah.
Speaking of process, though, I know that you have a lot of different approaches to different shapes and inspiration. One of the things we have here is let's check out your sketchbook, and you were kind enough to send over some selects that you have as your kind of pieces. So if we could look at that, that'd be great.
Ooh, let's see your sketchbook.
So you went ahead and you shared like this folder of NYC images that I know, with different reflections and things where you're kind of shooting. Do you want to talk through like why these are kind of what you identify as a sketchbook?
Absolutely. A lot of these, it's funny, like I don't love Instagram, but I think I treat it like a sketchbook. So a lot of these end up on there. But yeah, these are my, like, I'm processing without any idea of, or I'm making without processing in some way, right? In the pure act of creation, walking around my neighborhood. I don't know why I'm interested in photographing like this or why this thing happened, but it's sort of a process of collecting intuitively and also not making it so that everything is the final product.
Right.
For example, like a lot of these images are like, I'm interested in this. This is something that like I like photographing people super, super close up, right? And like cutting them into the entire frame. I like using the mirror. That's like a very like manipulative way to make an image, but entirely new for me. And so I feel like these are things that I'm like testing. I don't know. I have a strong intuition that they're part of my voice, but same with the trash, right? Like I'm obsessed with the trash that I'm seeing on the street and photographing it. And every time I bring this up to people, they're like, "Oh, cool, all right." But I'm like,
well, you picked the right place to go for New York.
Yeah, I'm just like, just wait. Like I don't know why, but like some point this is going to come together in a way that like I can articulate, and it will maybe articulate itself. But that's why it's in the sketchbook, right? It's pouring out of my brain, but in the form of images.
Yeah, it doesn't have to have that full thought, because it's just kind of your brain processing and kind of just getting it out there. Kara's saying that the close-up crop on the face is so interesting. And yeah, that was even ones that we could see that were kind of present in your final forms, which was something that you had for the rodeos too, was this idea of this really intimate, like real close thing that you only see honestly with the people that you're closest with. So it's kind of cool to see a photo of something so close.
Yeah. These are interesting. These are like all from like, I've been going to these cultural events like the St. Patrick's Day parade and the Tartan Day parade, and just like Scottish Pride. Just again, another thing in the sketchbook, right? I'm not really entirely sure why, but I'm not Scottish, I'm not Irish. But there's like a fascination with this like public display of like relationship to something that's not American, but you have a heritage, connection, identity to. Again, don't know where it's going, but it's.
So you don't have to is the thing. It's beautiful about that, you know.
And I feel like in the process of I love this picture. I feel like the thing on the wall behind them, I feel like he's one of them.
Oh wow, yeah. Right? No, I was confused for a second. I was like, is this a collage? Is this a thing? But no, it's actually just the shot with the background in it. That's remarkable.
So yeah, I think this is just like the process of, this is much how the rodeo happened. The rodeo was a sketchbook thing. Like I didn't go to the rodeo thinking I was going to make pictures. I went to the rodeo because I was like, oh, there's a rodeo in my town. I've never been to a rodeo. And then I was like, oh fuck, like this is super cool. Like this is so cool. There's like images to be made here, and there's like scatter I'm already interested in happening right here, right? And then this is what happened to me when I went to St. Patrick's Day parade, and then I was like, I'm gonna go to the Tartan Day parade, because I had this feeling that like there's more to mine, but I don't know why.
Right.
Yeah.
And it turns out really cool. I mean, and it's also nice to you see all the different types of people. You get all the different kind of relationships. I know you're saying with like this kind of public display of heritage that's outside of I don't know, just like exclusive communities, and just kind of like getting an idea of these cultural events that not most of us go to, which is kind of cool to see.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. And then you also sent over stuff that was outside of New York as well, that I also want to make sure that we give some time to. Get back to it. Another one that you have is both, let's see here. We have New York. We have
The Find the Liver Bird. I think that's on there, right? Or what was the other thing?
ARR, or did that? We have Finding the Liver Bird and we have Riza. Which one would you like to go through?
Let's just do Find the Liver Bird. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'll go ahead. I can pull that up for.
Yeah.
Got some project files here.
My avian photography.
And so, wait, what is this?
This is birds. So I was on a commercial job in Liverpool this last summer for 2 weeks, and I found myself often in other cities in the world or in the country, just sort of like for a long period of time, I begin to get very interested in sensitizing myself to the place. And this is a place that actually has the next picture. Stay on for 1 second. So this is the liver bird. It's a statue. There's two of them, and one faces out to the sea, and one faces into the city of Liverpool in the UK. And it's part of the mythology of the city. It's like the mythic creature that the city is symbolized after. It's like on its emblem. It's all over the place. It has a giant statue. There's a whole story about like it protecting and things like that. But it's been around since like the 1800s. So I just sort of got, again, like kind of surreal and abstract, and thought about looking at birds in reflections and looking at birds that were in the city, but were not, clearly not the liver bird, right? But like, I imagined that this bird was the mythic symbol of this place because, I don't know, because birds were everywhere, right? It's a seaport, and it just felt like the obvious totem. And in this country that I was in, like the England, where it felt like, I don't know, I felt like not a place that I in this modern day really associate with like totem animals and things like that. It felt very vibrant there. So I like find this to still be in my sketchbook because I don't know what to do with it. And I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm still trying to like, should I turn it into a book? What do I do with this? How do I connect it to something else? Right? Maybe it's a part of a larger thing. It's not just this little chapter. Maybe there's a animal totem in New York City that I haven't figured out yet. The rats.
Oh man, please don't focus on the pigeons. Oh no. But no, it's interesting, kind of like as we flip through these, as it kind of develops not only on the bird itself, but reflections of the bird.
This is like on the trash cans. You can see the bird as its symbol.
Oh yeah, right there with the wings. So it's interesting to see, kind of how that lands.
Yeah.
Literally, I guess. But it's cool to kind of just see you thinking out loud through your photos and kind of where it lands. And I love this kind of idea of the uncooperative model.
Yeah.
Bird looking away, but you also have this beautiful texture of these flowers and the split of the frame with the grass as well.
Yeah, this is probably one of my favorite images from the collection.
In the chat, Mike is wondering kind of your relationship with Firefly and the idea of like how you feel your work's going to stand out from maybe AI generated art in the future. And I guess we kind of talked about how you're going to use it in your process, but how do you feel? I know you and I have talked in private about this as well too, of like, how are you kind of feeling like your work differentiates from AI art moving forward?
Yeah, I think that my work is my photography and my filmmaking is really mostly built in the real world, and the fact that it's based in the context of real interaction. So I'm not going to deny there's going to be a huge shift in our like ability to tell the truth of whether things are documents of the real world or not. It's going to be really hard to tell. We already are experiencing that every day. But I feel like my work will stand out, and honestly, documentary work will stand out. I think it may create a bit of a renaissance for it and really remind us of the value of real interactions and the story behind the pictures and the sense of trust between human beings when they earn each other's access to each other's lives and allow them to make pictures of it. And that's what I hope, continues to be true in my work. I don't think that you can do that with a text to image prompt. I made those wrestling images, for example. I think they are gorgeous. I am jealous of myself that I probably will not make photographs quite like that of real people, but because there's not going to be that gorgeous natural lighting in the wrestling room that in my high school, it has no windows. But I will say that like the reason that I am not satisfied with ending that project with those images is because I think that there's so much more depth and mystery to the process of making when I have to deal with real human beings. So I don't know what I'm going to experience or witness or be privy to when I go and meet real human beings that are wrestling. And
with
I
subpar lighting.
With subpar lighting, exactly. And maybe that's sort of some of the balance that has to be struck, right? That like it's not about it always being perfect visually. It's about sometimes the story being compelling as well. So
no, I think that's really well said. And it's to your point, it's going to be something that like we are continually going to have to evolve and adapt to, and kind of see if there's a renaissance from it, how it changes, how it stays the same. And it'll be cool to kind of see that kind of roll out in real time. Yeah. Now we're a little bit over an hour into our show. Time's flying by. But we do like to take a little bit of time to take care of ourselves, and we're going to take a little break for something called Monkey Paws. All right, so Monkey Paws. You can either, do you want to take a time to breathe and be off camera, or do you want to do Monkey Paws?
I'll do it with you. I'll do it with you.
Do it with us. All right, cool. So Monkey Paws is an exercise that I learned through Anna Davis-Court's live stream. She is a phenomenal illustrator that streams on both Behance, Adobe Live, Twitch, you name it. And she has walked through this way to do these simple hand exercises to make sure that you don't get as much carpal tunnel, you don't have as much strain on your hands, because after all, our hands are our gateway to our art a lot of the times. And so we have these 4 little exercises. So what you're gonna do, you're gonna lean, put your hands towards the camera like this, or screen or whatever you're doing, and you're gonna bring in your hands like your fingers to make monkey paws, and ooh, ooh, ah, ah. You have to make the noises. It's super important. Thank you to Oliver also in chat for helping us out with the noises. And you release for 1. Then you go down like this. You bring it in. Ooh, ooh, ah, ah. And you can feel a little bit. If it hurts at all, you should stop. I'm not a medical professional. I get a little cramping sometimes, so I have to like take it slow. It's just kind of taking care of it. Then you flip over, put it out like this. Go like that. Ooh, ah, ah. And then for the last one, we're going to go towards ourselves and hold like this. Ooh, ah, ah. So release, shake your hands a little bit, bring your neck around a little bit if you can. Just, remember to stay loosey-goosey. You can do this as many times as you want. We normally just do 2 rounds of it, of all 4. But remember, just take care of yourself. Is there anything that you do when you're kind of shooting or you're out on a long day of a shoot that you do to take care of yourself?
On a long day of shoot, I'm terrible about that. Drinking water. Dude, drinking water is the #1 thing for me. The other thing is I use these little, like, this is not an ad for this, but use these little like foot things at my desk. So I'll stand sometimes, and like you sort of like stand on top of them, and your feet wrap over them, and they sort of like stretch your feet out and stuff. So yeah, and it makes me want to like stand up and like work for a little while, and had a lot of like sensory input. So I use that.
Well, perfect. Well, thank you so much for doing Monkey Paws with me, and we can hop back into what we were talking about. All right. And then next up, we did talk a little bit about the idea of some inspiration for you and things that really inspire you. So we want to do a little bit of art talk.
Cool.
Now, similarly for art talk, we can really just talk about like anything, any sort of inspirations. I know you sent over some product files for me. What was the reasoning behind the people that you chose?
Yeah, I'm pulling out my little list. I I think I chose all photographers actually. Ironically, I'm really inspired also by painters too. But I chose photographers who I think have a sentiment to their work that I really aspire to. And then also I added in like Irving Penn because he is this, I think all of them approach portraiture or people through the trust that they're building with them. Irving Penn did these amazing images of individuals, but he put them into a studio in this corner. And then he also did this other series of like cigarette butts and trash and things from New York City on the ground. So I think his appreciation for the little things in life, but also for simultaneously for people through that lens of personal interaction. That's something I've really
no, it's also interesting to see the to your point, the garbage, but this is documented in such a different way of like this almost feels like microscopic, almost scientific approach.
These are like 8x10, or I imagine probably like large format images that are Palladium prints. So they're a really amazing darkroom process that gives you this incredible range of tones.
Like a scary range of tones, honestly.
Yeah,
this is a little bit more closer to something that I'm a little bit more comfortable with. The idea of this portraiture with this awesome smoke coming out. Are the eyes enlarged here, or does this man just have really big eyes?
It's very large eyes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And this is just a beautiful portrait. What speaks to you about this one? Why'd you include this?
Yeah. I included this because I think that he's using lighting in a really intentional way here. And contrast as well, right? It's his eyes and the way that light sliver happens on the far end. It's balancing the frame in just an incredibly beautiful way that is also ultimately bringing a lot of attention to this person's very particular nature. Right. So I feel like it's just a masterful portrait that I've always aspired to make something like this.
That's great. We also have a few other artists that you had mentioned.
Sure. Let me look at Renique Dijkstra.
Renique Dijkstra?
Sure. Yeah. You'll recognize some of my rodeo pictures. I definitely have like drawn from her composition. These are a series of beach portraits that she took of young people.
It looks so sad.
Yeah. Now, these are studio lighting on the beach, so she's brought an artificial light. It's not something I do, but
oh wow, the color is wild.
Yeah, colors are crazy. But she's a master of, I think, gesture, and that sort of also building that presence between the subject and the photographer in an incredibly simple way. But I also think that she's taking the rules of composition and portraiture from masterful painters, right? It's really like this photography has long time tried to be painting or embodied a lot of what painting has. And I don't think that's always a problem. I think that there's elements of it that really do come through beautifully. And I personally am also drawn to using those similar elements, and she's been an inspiration for me.
It's also interesting so much is like, yes, I love all the different like feelings that we have and all of their body posture. And the lighting is different. Like the waves feel different, each one. And they feel, very like point and shoot almost of the idea of like a photo you would take on the beach of someone, but they have this narrative and this story behind them that feel like they have a deeper meaning to it than just a typical shoot, which is really cool to see.
Yeah.
And then the green tones in this one are really just throwing me off. It's crazy. It's cool to see. But it's a little alarming a little bit too.
Yeah, I mean, it's pulled off the web, so it also could be a little bit off color.
But I mean, it feels intentional,
Yeah, it's shot on film, so it very well could be that way.
Right. And then we probably have time for one more real quick. Right. So let's hop in.
Go to Sina Nazir. He's currently, you'll see him all over the New York Times right now. He's someone I really admire his work. He just made, I think I drew his image. I took his images from a recent story that he did about in LA, like plane watchers, LAX, people who go and like photograph and just look at the planes taking off from really close.
Yeah.
And I just think that the way he brought in the context of the world around it, so like the bird and the plane, or the people where like if we keep going, there's gonna be ones where you're like inside of a diner and someone's eating and not even looking at it, but then the scene is in the background and it's enormous, you know. And there's this like magic that he's this one.
There it is. Yeah. But it also seems like the person out front is kind of still focused on it too, which is, you know, then you have that relationship between the two.
Yeah. It's almost like the amount of like it's constantly happening, so it's not that special, and yet everyone's like, some people are treating it like it's like this thing you have to constantly watch. So there's just this real interesting like tension between how different people are applying their attention to it or not.
Oh, great. All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing some of the inspiration that you have behind your work. We have just a little bit over 10 minutes left.
Cool.
And we want to do one of my favorite segments of the show, which is From This to That.
From this to that.
So I went through and I just scrolled way down back to the times where we were probably in college, back on Instagram, and pulled some old photos that I think are interesting to see, both how they relate to the work that you have now and also kind of how they differ. One of them I'm going to start off probably with my old roommate, Melissa Mariano. And it's a portrait you have, and it has a focus of light and her kind of like looking off to the side. How do you feel your work is the same? How do you feel your work has changed? This is back in October 20th of 2013.
Yeah. I think my work is I like this image. I haven't seen this in a while. I think I am still making. I like the composition. Like I feel like
it's a great photo.
Yeah, there's like this interesting thing with the leg and the layer, and I don't know. I like this picture. Like,
it's good. This portion is not meant to like poo-poo your old work. It's so much of like how much of being an artist is this continued conject forward path and trajectory, and the idea that like you can still have old work that you're proud of, that you can still find things that you're still doing, but there's also things that are changing, you know.
I think I really like about this that still holds true for me, it's beyond the lighting and the composition. I feel like it's emblematic of the fact that like Melissa and I spent a lot of time together, and there was like this doesn't feel like a contrived photograph to me. I know that like her and I have made images where they're like way more like, I'm making portraits of you, you know. This kind of feels like we were in someone's house, and it's mine. It's definitely my living room, and hanging out, you know. And I can see my shit. So yeah, it's
in a weird way, like you have been able to manage this intimate relationship, and you were able to also kind of bring that over to your politician shoot. And the idea that like you have been able to identify personal connections, and then you're like, cool, when I meet up with someone who even commissions me, I can still kind of have this feeling of an intimate reaction.
How can I, like, I do, you're right. I go into things and I think like, how do I relate to this person? What do we share?
Right. And then we also have these shoots. Wait, I found it. You had one with a cow. And this one, I feel like this is from Maryland State Fair of 2013. How would you approach this shot now? Because obviously you kind of have a focus on the cow and on the person in the back.
Do
you feel like you would still shoot this the same way?
I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't make this image anymore. I think this image is really critical of the. I think this image just like doesn't understand where it is, and like I don't think I really understand where I was or why I was there, or my place in it, and I also think that I have more respect for like the vulnerability that people have in public spaces, and that doesn't mean that I don't take pictures without people's permission of them, but I just have a lot more like pause in doing it. And I think this I'm not ashamed of this, but I do feel like it was a learning moment where I like had to make this picture out of curiosity. And I now look back on it. I think I even looked back on it when I first really like started to develop it and stuff. And I was just kind of thinking like, do I need this?
And you would maybe approach it differently now too.
Also
on here, we have a selection of, where was it? I saw some lighting somewhere. But I mean, this is a great fish shot. It almost feels like fragmented. like lens in a sense, but then you kind of realize that they're ice cubes, which is nice. This is from Lexington Market, Baltimore, 2014.
Yeah, I think this is like one of those images I would probably still like to make, but I would make it in a more refined way. And this is also probably the technology at the time, right? Like in 2014, digital cameras were different and my access to them was different. So yeah, I actually went and made a bunch of fish images in North Carolina. I went to a trout fishery, and I went to where like into their factory where they like cut off all the heads and like put them into a big bucket and everything. And I haven't done anything with those pictures, but they look like an evolution of this, which is fascinating for me to think about right now. Because clearly I've been drawn to it over and over.
Through point also of like birds and animals and nature, but also kind of the relationship to human and the human process and the food situation, especially with corn. It like all seems like it has this continued vibe. I mean, here you are of a beautiful moment holding a lamb on a sheep farm in a small village in Bulgaria.
Yeah, I'm just like a person that I think I've been drawn to like questioning like what is natural and how that serves us, and our relationship to like to just like the environment and the world we build for ourselves to live in, and if it's like a healthy one or not, you know. And that's sometimes through our relationship to like animals or plants or nature. Sometimes it's to our food or to each other through our community building or our social lives. But it's definitely like, you know, how does the world themselves affect our well-being?
And then very last thing, we have about 5 minutes left. We have can I see your collection?
Could I see your collection?
And you mentioned that you have 3 awesome photo books from your collection that you'd like to share. And I guess do you collect photo books as like a form of inspiration to flip through?
Yeah, I collect them, and also it's like when I see one that I love, it's like an addiction. Like I cannot buy it. Like I need to have. It's so beautiful, and like I'm like, wow, someone made this. So yeah, it's one of those things. So I have 3 of them. One of them is The Hotel by Sophie Calais. She made this work in I'll open it up. She made this work in the 1980s, early 80s, where she was hired. This is some pages that I really like. Oh, that she also includes this really cool like little doorknob.
Oh, that's cute.
Thing. Yeah. And so she was hired as a person to go into like a work as a maid in a hotel in Paris. And she spent the whole time photographing and documenting through writing what she saw in people's rooms and getting to know people like through it. And very secretly. And then she only spent like a month doing it. And this work only got published in like 2019, I believe.
Okay, so it's relatively new.
Yeah.
It's historical.
Yeah, I love the idea that she's like looking at the evidence of people like through their temporary stay in this little place. You know, we cannot hide everything about us, especially not in our places we sleep and inhabit. And I think it's kind of why I'm interested in the trash. It's like you can't hide your trash. So the other book is Kang-hee Kim. She actually went to school with us. She's a year ahead of us. I don't know if you know her. She was in one of my photo classes, and she made a book called Golden Hour. That's really, really cool. That's all these like photo manipulations. I highly suggest looking her up on Instagram.
And it's Kang-hee Kim, right?
Yeah, I don't know if you can.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
I also throw it in chat for you guys too.
So they're like golden hour, but like sort of photoshopped into all these non-golden hour moments.
Oh, that's really cool.
Trying to
What's this one? Where does this take place?
This looks like it's on like a Metro North train.
Oh, cool.
But it's, you know, the sky in the light on the ground. So
right.
I just absolutely adore that. Also, both of these books, I have a thing for books that are like fabric colored. They're all like
oh yes.
Yeah. Okay, the last book is Blue Violet by Sig Harvey. She is a master at color and at poetry and the relationship between word and image. Her book is So here's just some pages that I really love. I really highly recommend looking up what she makes. She talks a lot about flowers in this as a metaphor for nature in general, as a metaphor for life and a lot of things. It's just like one page. I'll read it. It's like 3 sentences. But she says, plants respond to touch, but just a little. If you stroke your flower too much, they will expend a lot of energy on figuring out if they like it or not, and less energy on growing. There's like some fairly simple things, or sometimes they're very personal, but they are really poignant. And then there's this beautiful use of diptychs. So this is fireworks on one side, and the other side is this bouquet that is like underwater.
Oh, cool. And it really feels like it could be within the same, just because of the specs and the idea of like underwater, and that's really cool.
Yeah, so she does that throughout the book and really expands your imagination of like color and texture and relationship between nature and things. And anyways, I love her work. So brilliant.
Well, thank you so much for sharing with us. That's awesome. And I went ahead and put all the titles and authors into the chat for anybody who wants to check them out. But that just puts us at about time. Cool. Thank you so much to Jack for coming on. Do you have anything coming up that you want to promote, or we should keep an eye out on, or should we just follow you on Instagram to see what comes next?
Yeah, I think just follow me on Instagram, see what comes next. If you're following me on there, I do post about like where my films are as far as the film festivals are getting into and where they're happening. So if you pay attention there, you can see about screenings. If they're coming to your city, they like all around the world, wherever it gets shown. So yeah, absolutely. And also, like, if anybody wanted to talk more about like any of these things, like AI or any of this stuff, I love chatting about it. So feel free to send me a message.
All right. Well, thank you so much. It was a pleasure having you on. It was so cool to go through all your work and go through all your inspiration. Thank you for taking the time for being here. And I will talk to you real soon.
All right. Take care, man.
All right. Bye. All right, guys. That is it for me for Offset for today and for this week, actually. Thank you guys for a wonderful week of Offset. We had some really great artists. If you missed any of them, you can check all the replays out on YouTube and on Behance. Just look up for the Offset under Adobe Live. Coming up next, we have some more Adobe Live, so please stick around for some Firefly streams, just to Jack's enjoyment. And it has been a pleasure, as always. I will see you guys all again back in July. I think it's the second week of July. We'll be back for another week of Offset. But until then, enjoy your artistic community, and I hope to see you guys all around on the streams. Thank you to everyone who kept the chat alive and asked questions and hung out. And I will talk to you all real soon. All right. Have a good one. Bye.